Welcome to the season one of the Fractional Executive India podcast. Today we have Mr. Chandramouli Srinivasan. He is the CEO of Feedback Insights. He has built this company over almost a decade, and fortunately, he is one of the earliest movers in India who have been engaging with fractionals. So, in this podcast, along with my co host Rajesh, we will delve into the details of his experiences of engaging fractionals and how it helped his organization, how the fractionals were able to contribute to enhancement of the services and how they built the company. So welcome, Mr. Mowley, to our podcast. Thank you for taking time off your schedule to speak with us. So this
Thank you
is
so
what
much.
we want anytime. It's our pleasure. When we wanted to have conversations, Rajesh said, Hari, we need to start with Mowley, right? He's the one, he's a pioneer who's been engaging with fractionals, and that's how this took shape. But let's start off, sir. So please tell us about Feedback Insights, how the idea came, how you started, and then we'll get into the details of engagements.
Thank you so much, Hari, for inviting me to this podcast. And it's a pleasure to be here and share some of my experiences, both positive and negative, in my pursuit of using fractionals. Even before I knew it was called fractionals, we were using it in different formats. You'll have to kind of learn from how we were not having people who are full time on the roles of the firm and not a consultant who's got a mandate, but work continuously with the organization and pretty much embed, but they're very free to kind of do other work in there. I mean, that's why I kind of look at fractional as a professional who's coming and working with us. I would like to maybe take a few minutes to talk about Feedback Insights.
Sure.
We are an associate firm or Feedback Business Consulting, which is a pioneer B2B market research firm. This firm was created in 2000 as a separate entity, as an associate firm of Feedback Consulting, with a mandate of working with clients to be a listening partner. So we are a market research firm in the B2B space, specializing today to be listening partners for very many clients, doing their customer voice, voice of employees, the brand, and the voice of the brand, and many dimensions in the B2B space, both India and outside India. We are a 100-odd employee organization, headquartered in Bangalore, offices in Bombay, Delhi, and we have a sales operations out of Chicago, a leader out of Chicago. So that's a very brief introduction about the firm. We work with many firms in the technology vertical, in manufacturing, in advanced manufacturing, in professional services, knowledge services, logistics, and other industries in the B2B space.
Thanks, Chandramouli, for that introduction. And thank you once again for accepting our invitation to be, perhaps, if I may say, the founding respondent of the Fractional Executive Network India podcast. So, really thankful to you for that. I remember our association about 3-4 years ago as part of a consulting engagement that we were doing together. And I kind of thought that it would be good to get your input, considering that you do work with organizations across multiple domains, right? Now, one of the things that I picked up during our last conversation was that you did, bite the bullet, if you will, by getting into a fractional engagement with a senior leader in the US, if I've got that right. And I thought maybe if you could just dwell a little on how the journey really began for you, because for a firm that's been around for a while, making that transition from looking at a full-time resource to actually getting a senior fractional leader into the system itself is a fundamental shift in thinking. So perhaps if you can just elaborate on that.
Absolutely, Rajesh. I think sometimes need is the mother of invention. When we start realizing we can't afford, we start experimenting with various models, and we kind of found a leader who's a very very senior leader who's worked in the technology industry, handling very large sales operations for this large global SI. And this gentleman was getting to start on his own and provide fractional sales head kind of a role in the US markets for very many companies. And I found that opportunity very, very significant opportunity for Feedback for us to kind of lead in. While the temptation is the money, but I think what brings in is essentially the deep skills and deep knowledge that the individual brings in, and very many processes and systems and rigor and discipline that would really help organizations like ours to kind of leapfrog into an access to that kind of a talent pretty early on. That really was one of the biggest triggers to kind of get this started. Interestingly, way before this, we tried a couple of others, and some have been successful, some have been not so successful, specifically in the area of trying to have a CHRO kind of a role, which we kind of worked with a fractional. And I should say it had partial success. And it's more so we couldn't leverage that fractional leader well because, our maturity of utilizing that services was partly low on maturity, specifically in terms of operations. And whilst the firm was not ready for taking on some strategic HR interventions, and so that we could not fully utilize. So as we speak in the firm, we've kind of had experience in having a fractional CFO, a fractional CHRO, which didn't work, and this the sales leader I'm talking about in the US, who's literally fairly well entrenched in the firm, driving a business unit now with a fast growing revenue business in the firm.
Just walk us through a little bit more there. So, if I've understood you correctly, there was, of course, a need that was felt, but then probably you had to kind of set the ground within the system for you to first accept, let us say, a fractional leader, considering some of your previous experiments hadn't worked out too well, right? So maybe
Right.
that was one part. And the second part was having kind of set the, let's say, foundation or maybe created an environment that was conducive for a fractional leader to get in. I'm also curious to know, how did you go about finding this leader? What was the kind of process that you went through, and how did that whole thing fall in?
So I want to generically answer this, not specific to one specific situation. My experience has been this has come through more networks and references versus professionally reaching out. And this is primarily because of our size and scale of the firm. One of the things that I strongly believe is for a fractional leader to kind of work for firms like ours is an understanding and a willingness to kind of listen in to the fractional leader coming in. Uh, and if it comes to a reference, if it comes to somebody whom you know, is far more workable than purely coming in as exploration. That's been my experience. But I guess it's also because, we've been a little early in the game trying to utilize some of these structures. And I think the markets are maturing where you will and can reach out to in the professional world and very professionally leaders in the marketplace. There's a very thin line between somebody working for the brand or for the company as a consultant versus being fractional. So I have gone through my share of confusions on this. Consultants typically, at least wherever we have used, have come with a specific mandate of either a project or an outcome, and they deliver that, and then it's done, and they kind of move on. Most of them are more recommendations, and now it's for the leader to kind of then I have to kind of take a decision whether to take it forward, or after a report and the recommendations can well languish also. Versus in a fractional leader, the person pretty much is deeply involved in the organization. I mean, when I was talking about the fractional CHRO context, this gentleman will review the salary payouts to ensure audits of those happen right from operational stuff, which he or she may not be mandated, but really plays the role of the larger CHRO, plus to also check on very many other aspects and also advise me on certain interventions. So really going the 9 yards and being part of an organization, typically wherever we have worked, it's worked on a monthly model as either a retainer or as a percentage of certain businesses in the context of fractional sale approach that we've got. But essentially, that's the way we've kind of seen this.
And you could have put it out there better. I mean, what you just now said, Chandramouli, is like music to our ears, right? We only wish that more people were able to understand that fine difference between a consultant and, let us say, a fractional leader. I think you put that out absolutely beautifully. It's like, you know, we could have asked for, a better articulation of what a fractional leader does. Is something that we've also been now trying to educate the market in India, so to say. Now, perhaps I also want to, just close out on this particular thing. Your successful experiment with the sales leader is what now, about 3 to 4 years, kind of.
3 to 4 years now. Three to
Okay.
four years now.
Okay. And it's obviously, is that also resulting in some capability transfer happening within the organization on an
Beauty
ongoing
is
basis?
absolutely such a beautiful thing that I know this gentleman very well, and I said that's through networks and people that you know that I've worked with, and that's one of the reasons why this fractional model is not just working with fractional; it's way beyond being fractional, and the person is also emotionally investing. It allows for the person to also do very many other things in their lives and not being stuck with an exclusivity here. And for the capability that the person brings in, feedback as a firm will not be able to use the person's talent and capability fully. So a full model won't work. So it's essentially a win-win in that way if you really look at. So it's been quite valuable. Transfer of capabilities, we are still struggling because a larger firm, the firm has its own existing culture, and the fractional leaders come with a lot more competence which the firm is not exposed to nor is used to. So it does create certain points of discomfort. And for the fractional leader also, the fractional leader needs to do a lot of bearing with the brands like ours to make it successful. So you have to go and work hard to make this happen. Otherwise, it really doesn't work. And I can give you many examples. Processes don't exist. And, decisions taken ad hoc, especially firms which are 100 employee organizations tend to be very ad hoc in our work that we tend to do. And I'm sure this is true of mid-sized firms across categories where decisions are taken a lot more ad hoc-ish. Systems are not very, very many. We work with a little bit of competence and, lower level of competence, long rope. All of that are not something that would work with some of the leaders who can fractional into those. So it's essentially for them to kind of also put up with some of these inefficiencies. But wherever that has happened, it has really worked very, very well. And I want to also share with, we have a fractional CFO. In the finance side, it's very interesting because my auditor also doubles up as a fractional CFO for us. It's very, very common, and at least wherever I have spoken to, it's very, very common that they work. The difference here is that this gentleman is able to kind of also look at a lot of compliance aspects far superior than what it was in the past. Knowledge of having been a CFO elsewhere, this gentleman is able to kind of bring in a lot of rigor into the organization and is also able to bring in advice and say, listen, while this is what my advice is, but it's a management call, and allow for a management to take a decision, either which way, which allows me the freedom to work this out, knowing pretty well that I'm missing out on a benefit I would get if I'd taken it the other way. So those are beautiful opportunities that I could get in access to such leaders. The point I want to just highlight is it's not only one-sided. The fractional leader has to kind of put up with a lot of, maybe I'm using an extreme statement, put up with a lot of nonsense, if you will. Because one of the things I've noticed is fractional leaders typically come from places where they've got exposure to larger systems, larger organizations, larger capabilities. And I'm pretty much making a blanket assumption here that fractional works very, very well in mid-sized firms, or the need for fractional is a lot more felt in mid-sized firms. Making that as an assumption because the larger firms will just hire excellent professionals, and they've had the money and the deep pockets and the size and also the capability to utilize the full services of the leader. Mid-sized firms cannot use the fractional leader fully, not because they don't want to give it, because there's no opportunities. Even it's not just the money, it's the breadth of what a person can bring to the table.
Bang on, bang on. Yeah, we couldn't agree more. That's exactly how we are trying to position the fractional executive network as well in India. So what you've realized is uh, the narrative around fractionals is currently at a pretty low level. Not too many people understand it. They don't exactly know what kind of organization settings will lend themselves good to fractional deployments. That is something that we are putting in a fair bit of effort to educate. And in some sense, this podcast is one such effort in that direction. Before I hand you over to Hari, there's one other question that's there in my mind, and that's from let's say, there is enough and more that's being talked about the future of work, and depending on
Right.
which wrapper you want to use it. I am curious to know from a, let's say, especially if you look at, let us say, in your case, it's about, you are in one geography, you are looking at another geography, and you found a senior leader there who's actually adding significant value. I am currently restricting this to the geography that is essentially India, and I'm just trying to understand from your point of view, what kind of ecosystems would you like to see develop, for, let us say, the whole fractional leadership to kind of emerge and be of greater value to organization, especially since India does have a large number of mid-sized organizations.
Yeah. Uh, I would like to actually bring in a few things right now. I mean, all this has happened because of networks and reaching out to people and leveraging. I wish there were fractional leaders for many functions. For example, the firm needs a chief learning officer for our organization. We are working with a CMO, a fractional, with the different levels of success there. Definitely been able to help us kind of scale some objectives, but understanding of the market research space would really help, especially from a CMO perspective. So an ecosystem we can kind of get us people with kind of varied experiences will be very useful for a firm like us to kind of utilize them. The second is the consulting models are very expensive and is very cutthroat, and sometimes the organization has to work harder than the consultant to consume them. It's like it's a genie in the bottle. You open the genie and you have to keep that genie work. Otherwise, damn, you will get consumed. So consulting for mid-sized firms is definitely a very difficult place for us to consume. And sometimes our consulting requirements are not very clear what exactly we want to achieve. And the moment you want to achieve something and you open up and there'll be something else to fix before you achieve the other one. And then it's like, it's a never ending thread of things for you to fix to get to that final point. And, you really can't start very well. But in a fractional model, one is essentially what are the different models in the marketplace? It will be good for somebody like me to know what are the different models in which we can operate. Can it be really fractional? In the sense, half a day, 3/4 of a day in a month, 1 day in a month. Is that also be possible? I mean, right now, there could be very many ways in which this can work. So there could be different models. Second is access to more niche spaces in the context of fractional support in certain spaces. A lot is right now for me looking like fractional leadership in the space of only business enabling functions. But I'm not sure that's the only thing we should kind of restrict us to. Can we also have fractional models even in the core of the work that we do? Today's world is talking about gig working and so on, right? The question is, are fractional models extended even to the core business? I'm talking about market research. I can't afford to have a full-time quality researcher. For example, a qualitative research demand is pretty low for me. But if there is a fractional qualitative researcher whom I can kind of take as my head of qualitative, when I say qualitative research, typically in market research, you have quantitative, number-oriented rating scale kind of question, which is called the quantitative research. Qualitative research is more touch and feely, deep dive, conversational kind of research. And the people with deep expertise in this, I can't afford to have them full because I don't have volume of work coming all the time in that model. Now, is it possible for those kind of things? So these, I'm talking my business. I'm sure, it could be any manufacturing, it could be in semicons, it could be in designs, it could be in AI, it could be in many other places, whether there is possibility for something like that. Right now we have a model that I'm working with on the business excellence, and I'm working with a colleague of mine, a senior colleague, whom I'm working slightly in a different model, not a full fractional model, but there could be those functions also. So at least in my mind, looks like fractional is more achievable in the context of business enabling functions a lot more, not in the core. But my experience is slightly different because the sales is working for me from a new geography perspective. And if, for example, if there's a network which can get me opportunities in, let's say, in Singapore, or opportunities, let's say, in Germany or something like that, maybe it's worth looking at very many things. But the point I'm trying to make is an ecosystem will be hugely valuable, Rajesh, in the context of helping out different models, different functions, and different specialization, and also certain regions and certain kinds of areas. So that's pretty much.
Valid. I think the only related point that's coming to my mind is, since you started the conversation by talking about trusted networks, I think when you build an ecosystem like that, one of the questions that will still remain is, how does that whole element of trust really come through? Because there will be not everybody in that,
Yes.
and there has to be some way to then assess whether
Good
there is
point.
going to be a fit and all that. That's the other part.
I want to just kind of bring up a perspective, Rajesh. You know, human mind is always full of insecurities. When you use a fractional leader, at least places where it's worked for me is places where it is not threatening me. It is not creating insecurities in me, while still I'm able to draw takeaways and value from this whole thing. So I guess to me, that is an important area which makes it successful. So the point that you said about the trusted, one is trust on the competence. The second is a trust on making sure the person is matured enough to tell me and advise me and get certain things done which my organization can digest. And it's like this, the cook can cook the most elegant food, but if I don't have a appetite to digest it, might as well give me a little, modest morsel of food, and that itself is great for me. I mean, I just need a bland, simple morsel of food, maybe. So I'm just saying I'm a little different answer to your question, Rajesh, but it's the trust beyond just a trust on competence, a trust on the person going to help me, Rajesh.
I want to go back a little. I want to break the ice with another question. You engaged with a fractional about 4 years ago in the US. Honestly, US has started fractional work about 8-9 years ago. They are also maturing over a period of time. And you are bang on. It comes through trusted networks and things like that. Now, here's my question. If you compare to 4 years ago, you engaging with a fractional, the kind of conversations you had. And if you today, there are marketplaces for fractionals around the world. I can give you 10 different marketplaces. If you engage, what is it you are looking at from the person as an expectation? How things have changed for you after your first engagement and to 4 years now?
See, it's a bit unique because I didn't have in my mind that I'm seeking out a fractional leader when I started.
True.
So, I mean, it was somebody whom I knew very, very well, whom I could trust. A person who comes with deep amount of knowledge and competence. So I didn't go. So to answer that use case may not be a relevant example here because I didn't seek a model. In some of the ones, there were a couple in India. The CHRO route that I tried was because it worked with somebody else, and somebody referred to me saying it worked for me. And I said, hey, let me also try it out. Now, if that is available today, and if I have to kind of use something like a CHRO today, maybe I would like to go and maybe evaluate, we professionally reach out for help and seek potentially conversations with 2-3 leaders and maybe put out my objectives and expectations and maybe chat around her. That would be the way I would kind of, it's unique because the sales has not been too successful for too many people. So for me, I think that's a very unique one. So I'll stay with the ones on the CHRO or the CFO. If that is available, I would like to maybe go and look out for ways this could work in the marketplace. But in very simple terms, I would like to maybe evaluate, have chat with me.
True. And so you started with the US. Let's say tomorrow you're expanding into APAC or you're expanding into Africa or Europe. Would you engage with a fractional in that region?
Yes.
And would you build the business on those aspects?
Incidentally, I would want to use my US partner to kind of lead that because I have built great level of comfort and competence of working with this. So I would still work in a fractional model, but I would like to involve and expand it not US, but maybe international and go that route.
Correct. Very, very interesting perspective, because the reason why I asked the question is predominantly wherever in the world we are seeing fractional roles coming up and things like that. You have worked with the fractional in the US. So you are right now based in Bangalore and your fractional leader is based in the US. When you operate virtually, has it been challenging or do you feel the person is integrated into the company?
No. Yeah. One is you have to meet, you go travel, that person comes. Definitely between the two of us, we travel once a year. So 2 times we meet in person and there's constant engagement. Definitely there's a need for in-person conversation that will be very, very valuable. But it allows for a lot of, the sales thing will be a little unique because of the nature of the region. But even if you take within India, meeting often is an important element because it's not just about me. It's about the whole organization accepting. It's To me, one of the other important things for the success of something like this would be how much the larger organization sees the value that the fractional leader is able to bring to the table.
Correct.
I can see value, or I can convince myself about the value. But it's equally important that the larger organization sees the value, and I think that's a place lies the success of some of these models. And wherever we've not been successful, one of the reasons is primarily because that couldn't. It is not that I was not. I mean, one is me. Second is the function that the fractional leader works with. Third is a larger organization, and all the three integration becomes extremely crucial. And actually, it puts a lot more pressure. I mean, I dread being on the other side, being a fractional leader, because you have to do many, many, many more adjustments to make that fractional model works. To me, I see it's very difficult because I only see one organization. The fractional leader sees many organizations logistically. So you have to be super on the top of stuff on operational stuff and logistics stuff. I would like to have a meeting and there's something seriously required at one point in time. If the person is busy with something else, it becomes difficult. So the fractional leader needs to be super professional about logistics, time, and so on and so forth.
The commitment and the respectfulness which comes for the engagement, the fractional
Yes.
also has to bring in that piece of commitment to the organization.
So,
Perfect. You've been an entrepreneur, so I'll step into a different direction. You've been an entrepreneur, right? And you have built feedback insights over 8 to 10 years now. And you're seeing how entrepreneurship is evolving. We like it, we don't like it, how people are utilizing the name AI, how things are changing, and things like that. Now, my point to you is as an entrepreneur, to today's generation of entrepreneurs, including me, where I'm building a product on myself, and there are a couple of other partners who are also having their products. What do you recommend us as we build the organization in terms of engagements with fractionals? How do you recommend it to today's entrepreneurs? And if they should, why should they? And if they should not, why should they not?
It's a great opportunity. See, thing is, otherwise you will not have access to high quality, superiorly experienced people. There's no other model. Of course, there's a consulting model. Before we call them as fractional, in an earlier era, we used to call them as consultants. I mean, not consulting engagement, but consultants. We work with consultants. It's a language which is used, which is in parts was fractional in a way. I mean, so, but fractional has become more formal now, while it is with consultants who are people whom used to kind of operate. So one is clearly there's an opportunity to engage with higher superior quality talent and experience they can bring to the table. Second is for this to succeed, to have a high level of clarity what exactly you want from that fractional leader is extremely critical. Third one, don't write it on stone. Don't put this on stone. Be open to keep changing that as time progresses, and also leverage the strength of the fractional. Every fractional leader may not be, will have different strengths, and it's important for the entrepreneur to also kind of leverage the person. Don't look at it as a contract. Look at it as they're doing your help. Here's a person who's coming in and bringing with immense amount of work, how to maximize that thing and be open with them. Sometimes getting them is very difficult. Whether you can openly talk with them is difficult because it is, it's an absolutely bad example, but I'm going to give you an example. It's like, for senior care to have the help that you get for senior care. It's not the competence, it's the chemistry that you have between the senior gentleman and that helper. It's not just it is just that equation. Similarly, to me, it's the equation that the entrepreneur has with the fractional leader, which will make or break it, which comes with a lot of trust because it's very difficult to write everything down. And the fraction say, you know what, that is not part of the contract, that I can't do.
Correct.
The other thing is scope creeps. I get you for something and then I really make you work almost half your time or almost all of your time. We need to be cognizant in the sense we need to be real how much time the person is putting in and being conscious whether you're sufficiently rewarding the person for the time that person puts in and constantly ask that question. And if you can't afford, dump it. If you can't afford a person, but you can't flog it. And that actually kills the model. The worry is not about that individual. It kills the model.
Correct.
Those would be some of the things based on my experience of having some early wins in the fractional model. One of the things I know, gig working is a big thing today. So I don't even know whether this model will now extend to even gig working models also. I may have to hire somebody not at a leader level with this deep expertise, but somebody who's available with certain kinds of expertise. And half a day I hire somebody for things. The world may move towards it, and I don't even know what to call that. Maybe that's also fractional, but not fractional leadership, but maybe fractional employee, maybe. But with gig models coming in, one is saying that different people want to do many things, and that's true of the leaders. One of the pattern that I've seen, most of the fractional leaders are typically 45, 50 plus. They come with deep expertise. A lot of them also want to do many other things in their life, and so they choose to be fractional, not because they can't do something else, and they're not compromising and coming on a fractional. So it's very important that we give that respect. One of the things I've noticed is the respect, and you start seeing that the fractional leader is doing a little bit more than what the person would have actually done as per the contracts. And I guess that's what I'm actually sharing as that equation, that kind of a chemistry.
Correct. Very important. Very important. So see, that's one of the things. But before I go to the next one, today, if you are wanting to hire a fractional, you can be open about this, Mr. Mouli. Would you go to an organization who has a list of fractionals available on their plateau, or would you want to go? Would you go to individuals who are approaching you? I'm just asking this because we are trying to build FXN as a trustworthy organization. That's why our criteria are also very tough and we have a rigorous process. But from your perspective as a consumer of fractionals, would you prefer going to, network, or would you prefer to go and figure out individually?
See, frankly, I don't have access. If FXN is now available, I would like to evaluate, because there is no formal one today, at least as far as I know. There's nothing formal as far as I know.
Correct.
Most people will approach through networks, or somebody who's a client before, or who was a service provider before, who's a senior person, who's now taken on, and then you kind of talk to. But ideally, like I said, I do feel there's a need for a CLO. What will I do?
Correct.
I'll wait, find somebody in some network, in some conversations, and then ask this, and if it works and it hits a thing, then I convert. At this point, that's my only approach. If, let's say, FXN tomorrow tells me, saying, you know what, Mouli, I have a panel of 8 possible CLO in fractional model, I want to tell you, I've never tried it before. So I would like to see whether it works or not. But one of the things I would definitely do is to do cross checks, validations, look out for their profiles, and all of that will, in addition to what you may have done as validations and verification, not because of competence, it's more the fitment. It's not competence.
My last question from my side. Sir, when I talk to organizations, I have a little pushback. When I say I'm a fractional product strategist / CTO, I have a pushback. The pushback is, hey, we are a growing organization. We are a startup. We just raised a fund. My VC will not allow me to get a fractional. So I'm looking for some full-time guy. Keeping in mind, going fund will be less. What will you suggest or recommend to an entrepreneur who's bootstrapped, raising a fund, and putting a VC, fractional leader in their pitch deck, and convincing VCs to use the fractionals because it will cost them lesser money, but output will be more? What do you recommend to these kind of entrepreneurs who are struggling answering their VCs?
Ownership. There is a fear that the fractional will not take ownership, which is essentially, I'll do everything. I'll give you gyan. See, finally, strategy is only 5% of the time you spend in a year.
Correct.
The rest is essentially make it happen. Hook or by crook.
Correct.
Be there, be in the trenches. You'll be sitting with an absolutely low competent individual, but you have to get this one done. You have to fight your way. It's not going to be easy. So if fractional looks at it as a consulting engagement, it doesn't work. I have had situations, and I know of a couple of people who are trying to be fractional CMOs for firms, and a lot of the places, the issue is that the owners also don't empower them.
Correct.
They keep them as their office, or unless you allow them to go down in the organization, it doesn't work.
Correct.
You will have to kind of embed them in the organization. It's a very tight line, Hari, which is the fractional will have to make sure that they take the extra thing and go. It's not your knowledge alone. It's essentially being there to make it happen for the entrepreneur. And for the entrepreneur, not keep them call it as a fractional and treat them as a consultant doesn't work. You should get them to be part of the organization, part of events, part of the regular working, weekly reviews, monthly reviews, share stuff with them, then it works. And
Correct.
my own sense, if the VC starts seeing a fractional taking ownership, for example, the fractional says, I'll be a fractional, and let's say I'm a CHRO, CMO. All this deliverables is mine. Hold me responsible. My sense, why would the VC not like it? Because the value proposition is damn logical. Lower price, you take best part of this whole thing, but then entrepreneurs also need to find ways by which they create an office for the fractional leader and not get them to do just the basic. So it's a fine balance between both, Hari. But my sense is logical. Just that, and this is my gut feeling. Some of the fractional leaders may not be taking ownership.
Not some, sir. I mean, I know. I mean, it's luck. You have all the mix, right? Finding the right one also plays a very important role.
And it's not because they don't want to take leadership or ownership. Because if the organization and the entrepreneur has not given me any access, I mean, I'm not exposed. I don't have an email ID. I don't have access to your internal tools. I can't go and talk to anybody else. And you get very upset if you go and talk to somebody else. And then you expect me to tell you it's not possible. I mean, you can't have you can't you can't have a helicopter parent. You can't be helicopter leader trying to manage this fractional leader. So I think it's a very fine balance, and especially for an entrepreneur, the moment it's you move from bootstrap to be invested by a VC. VC is already breathing through your neck, and you don't know because one of the worry is fractional can leave at any point in time. But in employment, that employer, his or her next job is if he done a bad job here, he won't get another job. So I'm worried. I mean, the professional. So essentially, fractional looks like a leadership opportunity without ownership. Seemed to be a little of a negative perception in the marketing. I have to fight this. I mean, I had that worries and fears. The moment you ask me, saying, if you have to take a CLO, what will I do? Somebody will take an ownership to make it happen. I would prefer them. But I'm not too sure they'll find them. Kind of a worry.
So I absolutely hear you when you say, so entrepreneurs, first of all, the entrepreneur should buy into the whole concept of fractional, and he should be the person who's bridging it with his VCs and with his team, saying that, look, this is how it operates. It is just that Rajesh or Hari are not full-time.
Yeah.
And also the contract, right? End of the day, an employee also leaves. I mean, gone are the days when somebody resigns, 3 months notice are all gone now.
Absolutely.
Like, I mean, you don't want to give me a reference letter, take a walk, I'm going today. Like, it's become instant. And in the similar way, if the fractional has to leave, there will be the gestation period and all that stuff. And it can be done. And I think, as you said, 20, 25 years experience, we have seen that, right? We have seen that in terms of people will leave and you have to have your backup at all point of time. We know how difficult it is and, will help you out through the entire process.
Big difference, Hari. If an employee leaves, I run my business, I'm very confident I can double up for what the person did. But in most fractional, the entrepreneur has no clue how to run that function or the deep expertise. So I don't know. I'm worried that taking a fractional and the person quitting will do more damage to me than kind of a thing. Second is the whole positioning that the fractional model is only a commercial model. The individual is pretty much like a full-time for us, or not full-time, not the time. It's fully committed to the organization. I think that makes it workable. Now for a fractional leader, whether he or she can take 4 or 5 engagements at the same time and be fractional leader for 5 companies, my own sense is it's workable if the person can do. But the question is, can you do justice? Taking up 5 different engagements at the same time may or may not be possible.
May not be, yeah.
And there are also some roles which are required for a period of time. For example, let's say, somebody wants to go public or somebody wants to raise funds and you want a specific person from a investment banker kind of a fractional leader. You can have it for a period of time because after that, you don't need that individual, So those kind of places definitely can work, Rajesh. Or for example, technology transformation. I want a CTO, a fractional CTO for a period of time who will put everything in place and then have an organization set up and then the CTO will just move out.
Exactly.
And I'll have an employee who's a head of IT and I can continue to run. Is possible. So in functions like finance and functions like, this investments and, raising funds or CTO, these are all very, very workable. And to me, even CMO can be workable in that manner when you can set up and go. But I guess the question that you asked me, the challenge pretty much is the way both the entrepreneur and the fractional leader sees it, High. If I think both of them see well, I'm sure the VC will be more than happy to kind of not spend the kind of money.
It's a related point that that's kind of triggered in my mind. Is one of the first fractional assignments that I got into. The setting was the firm is based out of Singapore, has a bunch of much younger people within the system, and got me on board essentially to provide the leadership with the understanding that over that period of the engagement, there will be enough knowledge transfer to ensure that they can run stuff after I exit. This is to your point about what Molly that you made about the ownership part, and I think it's also about how expectations are set at the initial discussions about saying, look, if we are trying to solve a specific problem, then maybe X or Y is best placed to solve that problem, and incidentally the way the problem will get solved is through a fractional model. Ultimately the outcome is still the solution to the problem, and it just so happens that it is a fractional deployment that really makes it happen. But all the points that you made are very very valid points, things for organizations to think through. I think the point about empowerment that you made and all that is super critical. Otherwise you're just having another person who's then trying to figure out. And to, I think that point about how many assignments, I mean, just wondering, you made the point about being able to do justice. And my personal take on that is that perhaps if you're looking at a fractional leadership kind of a deployment, maybe a max of maybe 2 or 3 or no more than 3, right? I don't think anybody can really add value beyond that kind of a number. But anyway, we'll I think lots of
Correct, 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 correct. I mean, I know it sounds very negative, but it'll also, fractional will also help these GCCs or any kind of organization to test the waters before they try to bring in that kind of leadership into the organization to see how they fit in, right? And the other aspects, Ms. Molly, what you mentioned is, I think, a number of projects or something. For example, I quit my full-time job and became an entrepreneur and then became a fractional because I love working on my terms. And I would love to have, I mean, in a way, France model, right? 4 days a week, you work and 3 days. I would love to live that life. So if I can pack in 10 projects in 4 days and I'm able to do justice, it should not be a problem. But if one project is helping me do the justice, 4 days a week engagement, remaining 3 days, I'm on my own. 1 day is a movie time, 1 day is family time, 1 day is pet time, whatever. I want to live and I don't do this thing. So as Raisa said, it's all comes back to the individual. And I think with 20, 25 years experience, you know that you're not playing fool anymore. I'm pretty much set in what I want in life and the next 30, 40 years, how I want to live, kind of an aspect. Any closing thoughts from you, Mr. Molly, sir? True. Correct.
So one leap of faith is required, and the operating word as you use it, more value multiplication than cost reduction.
Correct. Everybody has the learning curve. Even your employee has a learning curve, right? We usually, when I was in the corporate world, we used to give about 60 to 90 days as a learning time. So that's the time. Correct. Correct.
Exactly.
Correct.
Absolutely.
Perfect.
Somebody who's solving the
Perfect.
problem is I think the way to.
Ms. Molly, thank you so much for your time. It was really amazing having a conversation. Thank you so much for your time. Rajesh, thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Really, real pleasure. Yeah. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Have a good day and a good weekend. Yeah.